Welcome to the NFL MVP Momentum Podcast. I'm Sam Holcroft alongside Peyton Thompson. Before we begin, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP, follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. And don't forget to tune in to our live stream Thursday, April 25th at approximately 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time for night one of the NFL Draft. Watch us react to all the picks, see how our mock draft does, and a bunch of other games that we'll be playing. Today's topic, we have this one, and then we have next podcast, which will be our group mock draft, and then we got the draft. So PT, we did this last year. We had a lot of fun with it. You brought 3 questions. I brought 3 questions. We don't know what the questions are. Hopefully we don't have the same ones, but we're going to talk about some NFL draft prospects and have a little bit of some debates here. So, PT, I think I'll start off with my first question for you.
Get started.
Need to. Okay, I don't know how to undo this. There we go. Okay.
It's very interesting. If I had to say, I would say no. I think that last year, and obviously it's a little different of a class, but I think that there's going to be one guy, probably Bo Nix or Michael Penix, that gets left out of the first round, because I feel like once you get to that 20 to 31 range, because there's only 31 teams this year, because the Dolphins picked, they forfeited.
32.
30. So there's 33?
They do have their pick. They didn't.
That's very interesting. All right, 32. Either way, I think that most of the teams through 20 through 32 aren't really going to be targeting a quarterback. Maybe if it's a backup kind of guy, but it kind of depends on what you value in a quarterback if you're there. But obviously with the bottom 2 guys, I think we can both agree that the top 4 guys are going to go off in the top 15 probably. But the bottom 2, I could definitely see Michael Penix probably going more so in the first round. I just feel like with Bo Nix, he's one of those quarterbacks that, he's a good college quarterback, but I don't think that he's going to be able to have enough intangibles, enough tools to be able to be a guy that you want to take in the second round and try to develop, because he's not necessarily young, and he doesn't have athletic tools that some of the other guys have. Could he be a good quarterback in the NFL? Sure. But I think that it would definitely be unlikely for him to go in the first round as a project guy in the later picks, because he's not going to go top 15. And I'd be very surprised if the team like the Broncos, even though I know the Broncos need him, I just would be very surprised if, they took him. So I guess my answer to this would be no.
All right. So, I'll play devil's advocate here. I think that there's a chance that, all 6 quarterbacks can go in there. So, I mean, we can't 100% lock it in, but the odds of 3 quarterbacks going in the first 3 picks is pretty good. So then we just need 3 quarterbacks to go in the next 29 picks, right? So the odds are in our favor. But there are teams that could be looking to draft someone. Most notably, Vikings, Broncos. That's 5. So then that means one team just needs to sneak a quarterback in there. Could it be the Raiders? Could it be, maybe a team that's looking for a potential backup? Now, it's really crazy, but what if Dallas drafts a quarterback?
No way. No way.
They traded for Trey Lance. This is the last year of Dak's contract.
I just don't see it.
If he wants to be the scapegoat, or if they make him to be the scapegoat, I'm not saying that they will, but what about, let's see.
I'm seeing a team more like the Rams or the Dolphins as more of a suitor.
Yeah.
Because I'm not convinced that, obviously the Rams with Stafford, his age, they're going to need another quarterback sooner rather than later. With the Dolphins, to be honest with you, Sam, I'm not convinced that they are sold on to To be honest with you, not as the guy at least. I know he's probably a top 15 quarterback, but I'm just not certain that with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and the kind of offense they had last year, they're convinced that he's going to be able to take them to bigger heights. So I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of had a guy, but I'm just, I'm thinking about it, and I feel like these teams here, I mean, the Rams makes a lot of sense, right? Because they're going to need that kind of guy to learn and sit for another year or two. But with a team like the Dolphins, a team like the Cowboys, I don't think you want a guy like Bo Nix coming in next year necessarily, or even possibly this year if it's the Rams. I mean, probably not, but so I don't know. It's hard to see it. It's hard to see it really. Arizona at 27 is interesting. Um, especially because that pick doesn't really necessarily matter. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it's not their pick. So, right. So, and they know they're getting MHJ or, more than likely getting MHJ or maybe Malik Neighbors. But,
Right.
so they're gonna have options at that later pick. And if they don't really like what's on the board there, then maybe they trade Kyler Murray next offseason, get some picks for him, and then try to kind of soft rebuild this thing. I'm just not convinced that they would want to go QB here. So, I don't know. It's kind of dicey because I agree with you. I mean, the probability, the odds of another quarterback outside of the top three we mentioned that are going to go top three, or top even four going in the top 11, is, not terribly unlikely. But I feel like it's like maybe kind of last draft is kind of getting to me where I feel like Will Levis might be better than a guy like Bo Nix or Michael Penix, and he went in the second round. And there was a lot of hype. I don't know if you remember. There was a lot of hype of him going top 10, last year, and he fell to the second round. So
A lot of
just
people have him going forward to the Colts.
yeah. So I guess I'm just kind of scared of that happening again.
Yeah. Okay.
hmm
So, PT, what's your first question then?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me highlight it. My first question is going to be which corners will be out of the first round, and I think you could answer this a couple different ways. You could say, well, one corner is going to be out, or not one corner. You could say three corners are going to go first round, right? That could be whatever corners you want. You could say all five of the top five are going to go first round, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. Or you could say two, because I feel like the bottom three do have deficiencies. So what do you kind of think about that?
So, when you're looking at these, I think the two locks that are obviously in the first round, Quenyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, Um, and then you look at Nate Wiggins, and considering that he is 6'1", he is kind of on the lighter side of what you would want as a corner. Good thing that he's 6'1" and not 6 foot. Otherwise, that could hold him back.
Good,
Um,
yeah.
and then this is a pretty deep cornerback class. We have a lot of good guys. I mean, like TJ Tampa is probably going to go higher than where Takeathon has him at 53. He could be an early second round guy. Rakashaw Jr., Lassiter, could also go up there. But this first round is going to be so deep. I mean, tackles deep, quarterbacks deep, wide receivers deep, cornerbacks like there's a chance that that's 25 of our 32 picks, and there could be 7 other picks outside of those 4 like core positions, maybe even more. So it's hard for me to see both Cooper DeJean and Kool-Aid McKinstry getting in. I feel like people do like Cooper just a little bit more than Kool-Aid, just because
hmm
Kool-Aid is the number 2 on that Alabama defense, and he wasn't number 1. If Terrion Arnold went somewhere else, if he was like a Georgia guy, and Kool-Aid was the number 1 in Alabama, I'd probably put Kool-Aid over Cooper, but Kool-Aid was essentially number 2 here. So that's why I would kind of think that, you know, top 3 are locks, and then one of the other 2. So I don't know if that quite answers your question or not.
I don't know, because honestly, I feel like all these guys kind of have deficiencies, to be honest with you, which I guess doesn't really answer my question either. I feel like Quinion Mitchell, you look at his profile, he played at Toledo. I feel like some scouts, I don't know how many, but some scouts are going to say, well, it's not a great conference. He didn't have a ton of interceptions. Of course, he had a lot of pass deflections, but he's also not super tall. He's not super strong. So I'm not sure that scouts view him as the guy, like the guy. You look at Terrion Arnold, right? Played with a great number 2 corner. Could have been number 1 on another team. Played with Dallas Turner. Going to go top 10, probably top 12 in this draft. And you just, Bama. You kind of get what they bring on defense. And so it's kind of easier to play as a corner in that kind of system. Nate Wiggins, injury stuff. He obviously that issue he had at the combine where I think he pulled his groin. That's an issue. Very tall. He's the tallest corner that is in the top. I guess 7 or 8 guys here, but the injury thing isn't great. And then Cooper DeJean is more of I think a slot corner because I don't think he's great in coverage and he's not great in man. Athletically, but he can match up against tight ends and guys like that. So I don't really know if they want him playing outside that much. And then Kool-Aid, like you said, he was the number 2 corner, so he didn't have to take on number 1 assignments. So all these guys are just kind of deficient, and I just don't know how much teams value or undervalue that. So for my question, I'm gonna say no. I don't think they. I think I think there's probably 3 corners that go in the first round. It's probably Quinion Mitchell, Terrion Arnold. I want to say Nate Wiggins, but I wouldn't be surprised if he dropped a little bit. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he went and Cooper and Kool-Aid went in like the middle of the second, because of the things we talked about. So yeah, it's a tough one for sure.
Yeah. I'll bring up my next question. My question, kind of sticking with the defenders here. How many defenders will be taken night 1 on the draft?
Loaded question.
So I got this pulled up for you.
Okay.
So you got a bunch of edges, obviously. 3 great ones. We just talked about the 5 corners that could. You got Byron Murphy as a defensive lineman. You also got Chop Robinson, Newton from Illinois. And then you get some other guys, Tyler Nubin out of safety out of Minnesota, Darius Robinson, Missouri, Rakashaw, like I said, Peyton Wilson. A bunch of guys that can kind of sneak their way up there. But this is also a loaded offensive class. So what are you thinking?
It's so weird that in a draft we're gonna have, in my opinion, to answer your question, I think we could have 7 to 9 defensive guys drafted, which is only about 30% of the first round. It's so weird to me that it's like that, to be honest with you. But I think it's about 30% because I think Dallas Turner and Latu and Verse are locks to go first round. I think Quinion and Terrion Arnold are locks, so that's 5. I do think Byron Murphy goes in the first, especially with D linemen and D tackles now getting paid as much as they are. I think he has to go first round. Now it's gonna come down to, and I think Chop Robinson would probably go first round too. So then it comes down, that's 7. So then it comes down to, do you think, like we just talked about, funny enough, do you think that one of the 2 corners will go, or do you think one of the other edge guys will go? And I could see Newton going as well, actually. I don't know if I can see Robinson or Nubin or Peyton going first. But then I guess it depends on your over-under. If I were to have a betting odds on this, I would be at 8. That'd be the push. Because I think it could easily be 7. I think it could easily be 9. But it's gonna depend on the other corner, the third corner. or the fifth edge
I
guy,
guess.
which is crazy because I feel like this is a pretty decent edge class too.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a dominant edge guy. I don't think you have a Will Anderson necessarily. You don't have a Chase Young prospect wise. You don't have a Khalil Mack prospect wise. But you do have three guys that are really good that are all kind of like clumped together. That could be, for all we know, it could be 8, 12, 15. So I'm gonna say right now I'm gonna say 8. I think 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 8's a good number.
So, off the top of your head, do you remember how many defenders went last year on night one?
Off the top of my head, no, but I want to say 13.
13. It was 16. 16 out
Okay,
of the 31 were defenders.
all right.
And I
That's
think
why it's
in our
surprising.
mock, yeah, in our mock, if I remember correctly, I think we had 13.
Okay.
So there's a good chance that, and there's a bunch of guys that, went first round that we didn't really see, like Mozzie Smith, we didn't have
Yeah,
on our mock, and he
yeah.
went to the Cowboys,
Some
you know,
corners or a
yeah,
corner maybe.
yeah. So Kalijah Cansey, I don't think that we had him
Yeah, even though
getting
he
drafted.
probably was a first round talent, but we didn't have him in the first round.
Right.
So
So I think that there could be 10. I think, there's going to be, at some point, you're going to be like, we got to just fill this position, even if it's a slight reach. I mean, people were not happy with the Jack Campbell pick. I know that was a second round pick for the Lions, but people were
yeah,
not happy about that reach where Jack
it's
Campbell
yeah.
could have
It's
been
funny you say
available.
Campbell because when you said Campbell, I thought Dan Campbell, but it was actually Jack Campbell.
Yeah.
Either way,
And
right?
yeah, and but it was a need that they needed. He was a week one starter, and he made a difference on that defense.
hmm
So if you're in that late round, like, there's a chance that, like, maybe we're just like, gosh, we need a defensive lineman. Murphy's gone. Let's go get Newton, even though he's projected to like go in the next 10 picks, but we're not going to be able to get him next time we come up, and we
Yeah,
can't afford to wait and, like, get another receiver when we already have two and a half that we trust. So I think that when it comes to defense, you might see a little bit more reaching, and maybe that kind of goes back on what I just said about the corners. Like, maybe teams are just going to be like, what, let's just go get a corner, because if we get a corner next round, it could go, we could either get the fourth best corner right now, or who we view as the fourth best corner in our eyes, or we can wait to the second round and get the ninth best. So,
mm,
what are our options? If we where it depends on your team need,
yeah.
and with the league becoming even more offensive every single year, this, with how good this defensive class is, I think someone will snatch them up.
That's fair. I think 10's a decent number. It's just tough because, like you said, this offensive class is loaded. That's what makes
Yeah,
it tough.
yeah. All right, your next one.
Yeah. You want to go ahead and highlight
Um,
it here?
here we go.
Yeah. Will JJ McCarthy go top 5?
Oh boy, you're hitting me with the hard one.
That's a tough
So,
one.
in my opinion, let me just real fast. Oh, okay. I guess that's gonna stay blurred. Um, will JJ go top 5? That's a good one. So if you listen to our top 10 preview last week, I came up with this wild, hypothetical trade that the Chargers trade away Justin Herbert, get a bunch of first round picks, maybe send another like later round pick to the Vikings. And so they have 3 first round picks, and with pick number 5, they draft JJ McCarthy. The more I think about it, the more I really hope it doesn't happen, because I just think that is a disaster waiting to happen. especially because like that's going to be the front office putting so much faith into Jim Harbaugh and everything. And next thing you know, they have 2 really bad seasons in a row. They're halfway through the third, and it's really bad. And the front office just realized, you know what? We might have messed up with Jim Harbaugh picking his guy. So I don't think he will. I really think that you can take, even though I'm not all too high on Drake May, he is most pro ready compared to JJ McCarthy. And I do think that I think a little bit more highly of JJ McCarthy than I'd say the average fan does. I think that he has a good opportunity to be good in the NFL if he has the right tools. Now, right now, I don't think that Los Angeles is that. I don't think that, they have exactly what it takes. But, if he goes to Minnesota, that could be good. Which there's some rumors that Minnesota trades up to 5 and picks him. And I think that's the only scenario that could happen. I don't think Denver can trade up to 5, but I think Minnesota could with their 2 picks that they already have. So if it happens, it's the Vikings. But will he get drafted in the top 5? I don't think so.
Yeah, I gotta say I agree with you. This was gonna be one of my hot takes that I actually told you about. This is what I think is gonna happen, to be honest. I think that other teams don't think as highly of JJ McCarthy as some of the prospects are making out to seem. I think that sure, he's a top 15 guy. I think NFL scouts think that. But I don't think necessarily that he's a guy that teams are thinking we gotta draft up for this guy. Um, so to be honest with you, I have him going to the Vikings at their original spot at 11. They don't have to give up anything. I don't think that really they're too scared of anybody coming up, to be honest with you, because who do they really have to worry about? They have to worry about Denver, Raiders possibly, and I know you don't think so, Sam, but that's what people are thinking because they do need a quarterback at some point. It's those 2 teams, and that's really it. So, and for Raiders, maybe less so, but the Broncos, they'd have to give up a lot of capital to go all that way up. So I just don't really see it happening. So I think that they'll be okay sitting at 11 because obviously Chicago, the Jets, the Falcons, the Titans, the Chargers, the Giants aren't going to take him. The Giants could, but I feel like that'd be such a huge mistake to do that. When you're paying DJ especially, and you don't even really have much of a game plan for your offense as far as talent goes. So I think they're going to be okay staying at 11, taking him there, and rolling the dice. Who knows, man? They could take Michael Penix at 11, and somebody else could take JJ like the Broncos. That's what I think.
Yeah. Um, and just looking at his stats, like, he's not a bad stat guy.
Mm-hmm.
He still throws a decent amount. I mean, he averages probably like 23, 24. I guess it's 22 attempts per game. And people fault him for that. People think that he's not that good of a thrower. But tell me this, if he's completing 72% of his passes, times that by 22 attempts, he's completing 16 out of 22 a game. And yet he's not a thrower. He's averaging, 200 yards a game off of 22 passes. Like that's not all too bad. It's just the fact that they were a run first and one of the best running teams in the nation, might I add, with Edwards and Blake Corum, it just holds him back. So that's why I was hesitant to be like, you know what? Because obviously Jim Harbaugh at 5, he's thinking about that every day. In that organization, they're thinking about it. But obviously they got Justin Herbert, who can, any year be a top 10 quarterback, maybe even higher.
Top
But
7 for sure. Yeah.
yeah, um, but if it's just, do they want to embrace a full rebuild when they could just go Malik Neighbors here and
Feel
be
good
fine?
about
But
it.
exactly. So yeah, I just JJ's a touchy one because like
We,
I wouldn't be surprised if he goes fifth, but I
yeah,
also wouldn't be surprised if he falls to like 20 something and he's like the Will Levis
yeah,
of this draft.
exactly.
Yep. So
We're on the same
then
page.
I'll ask you my last question, P.
Okay.
Yes or no? There will be 6 trades on night 1 of the draft. There was exactly 6 last year.
So go to the tankathon. And this is obviously going to be a pretty tough question to get right, obviously. Because you can't, it's one of those things where it's hard to predict because teams don't really need to trade, you know? Typically. Maybe one or two teams do, but typically, like the Texans last year, they didn't need to draft up back to 3. It was awesome that they did, but they didn't really need to. It was a good trade because their pick ended up being not very good this year for the Cardinals. Um, but it's things like that where it's so volatile in the ultimate, success of the team that's giving up the pick where I'm not sure a lot of teams would even want to trade down. But then at the same time, it's one of those things where teams do have big needs like a quarterback. I think, I mean, it's really just cornerback, I feel like, maybe, because even if it's like, okay, you're a team like the Bills, right? And you need a receiver. I don't think you're giving up future picks to go get a receiver because of how deep this class is. I think the class is so deep that you're okay sitting where you're at and having 2 or 3 guys on your board and saying, we'll take one of those guys, and we're gonna hope that they're there because they should be, or we're gonna take a different position if they're not there. So, I would say definitely under 6. I think the number I'm gonna put it at is I'm gonna put it at 4. I think there's gonna be 4 first round trades because I think 2 of them. I'll say this: one of them is gonna be for a quarterback, whether it's getting into the late first to get Penix or JJ or Bo Nix, I suppose. And then one of them is going to be earlier for a quarterback, possibly. So one of those two is going to happen. So that's one guaranteed trade. And then I think 2 of those 2 trades in between, I don't know, 12 and 20 are just going to be because teams want their guy. They want to make sure that if Fashanu or Fuaga's there at 13, 14, and it's a team like Miami or it's a team like, I don't know, Minnesota that wants to use that 23 because they got JJ and they want to keep building. And they want to get Fuaga. They're gonna draft up to get him at 15 with Indianapolis. Um, it's gonna be a couple trades like that. Then you put it at 3, and then you really just need one team to draft up into the first round, late first round, to get a guy that they don't want to slip into the second before their next pick. So I'm gonna say 4 trades, less than 6, less than last year, obviously. But it's still going to be a few trades here and there that are going to make the first round a little bit spicy.
Yeah, so with last year, I guess technically, I asked are there going to be 6 night 1 trades. Technically
Mm-hmm.
there were 7 with the Bears and Panthers, but I guess on night 1
On
there
night,
was
yeah.
6. With the Texans trading up to 3, which was insane. And then the Cardinals trading from 12 to 6, the Cardinals doing like a substitution method.
Yeah.
Then there was those, and then the Bears and Eagles flip flopping.
Which is a weird one.
It was very weird, considering the 2 guys that they took. That could have just been available if they just went back to back, but to each their own. And then you had the Giants who traded down, or sorry, the Jaguars traded down to the Giants pick, and then did that again for the Bills. And then let's see, there was another one I am missing somewhere. Oh, and then the Steelers and Patriots flip flopped three spots. I think that your template of how the trades are going to go is right. But I think, like I said earlier, kind of with those defenders, that there might be some teams, like, and something that I would keep my eye out on is the Texans, Browns, and Panthers trading into the first round because they don't have a first round pick. Those are 3 teams without a first round pick. So I would look forward to those 3 teams trying to get into that late first, like trading with a Detroit or a Baltimore, maybe that Arizona, because they maybe don't need that pick as much and would be willing to get as many assets as they can.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Or Green Bay,
you know,
maybe.
Green
Yeah.
Bay, yeah, So I think that there's a good chance that one of those 3 teams also trade into there. It could also fit with one of your 4 scenarios, or it could be a totally new scenario. So I think 5 could be a good number, but I agree that false. It's going to be not 6.
Yeah. Do you wanna for the fun of it, do you wanna say you're picking 5 here and I'll pick 4?
Yeah, we can do that.
Cool.
All right, and
All
then your
right.
last one.
My last question here. Um, will all 3 receivers, top 3 receivers, go top 8?
Hmm.
Because I specifically made it top 8 because I wanted to cut off the Bears.
Because that makes it too obvious. That makes
Yeah.
it a yes.
If Adunze is there at 8, or I mean at 9, you have to take him, right?
Right. Exactly. You get Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. You get Rome Odunze. You know,
And the
you
offense
can
is
have
looking great.
you have so much. Yeah, DeAndre Swift as your running back. You still
Yeah.
trust Cole Kmet.
Yep.
You already drafted Caleb Williams. Like your offense is looking real good. You
Mhm.
know,
And you got
as
Darnell Wright
much.
last year.
Yeah, exactly. So Marvin Harrison, for sure, yes.
Yeah.
Malik Neighbors, 99%. The only thing holding him back is, having a scenario like an Eli Manning saying like, "I'm not gonna go play for New York," and
Right.
they're just like, "Well, okay, whatever."
And that
Um,
would be such a crazy Raider incident.
exactly. So yeah, Malik Neighbors, 99%. Um, Titans, Joe Alt is screaming there. Like the Titans pick is screaming Joe Alt.
Yeah.
Like with releasing Taylor Lewan going into last year and just not being able to help Will Levis, I think that this has Joe Alt written all over that pick.
Mhm.
Um, so then it comes down to the Falcons, and the Falcons don't need to draft a wide receiver. They got Drake London, they got Kyle Pitts. I know he's a tight end. Um,
Sort
they
of.
got.
Yeah.
I mean, if they want to use him as a wide receiver, they totally could.
Yeah.
you know, and
Mhm.
you have so
You
much
got
on
Darnell
offense.
Mooney.
Yeah, Rondell Moore, like you
Yeah.
got, and I know a lot of those guys are like good number 2 guys, maybe even 3s,
Threes.
but
Yeah.
you have your guy who could be your number 1 because I don't think Odunze is going to be the number 1 over London. Not with the
Ooh.
London's upside.
Ooh, interesting. I like that take. I like that.
Um, but you also got Bijan. You still got Algier. Your offense is looking really good. Why
Yeah.
add to it when you lost some key parts on defense? Not necessarily
Yeah.
key parts, but like
You need to replace
you got
Calais Campbell, and Grady Jarrett's not getting any younger.
exactly. So an edge rusher, whether it's Dallas Turner or Latu, it's the pick here. So I don't think that all 3 wide receivers are going to do that unless Atlanta drafts back or trades back.
Trades back.
Now, something I just came up with. What if they're okay with Dallas Turner, Latu, or Verse, and they trade with the Vikings? So the Vikings go to 8 to ensure that the Broncos don't jump them, because the Jets could trade back. The Bears could essentially trade back if they really wanted to,
True.
and the Broncos could jump the Vikings. So the Vikings might be a little too trigger happy to be like, okay, we got to make sure that the Broncos don't draft over. So then maybe
Then
the
he then it yeah. Well, no,
so
but then he still wouldn't. He
I guess
still
I guess
wouldn't
they wouldn't
go.
they wouldn't go receiver.
Yeah.
So I guess
Either way.
it'd have to be a team more like the Raiders then, if they really felt like they wanted to give Gardner Minshew more options. But at that
And I
point,
just
you
feel like
can
that'd be
just
weird.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think no, I don't think the top 3 wide receivers are going to be going in the top 8.
So I pretty much agree with you as far as your reasoning and things like that, in your scenarios and stuff. I do think there's one part of it that we kind of discounted though, and it's just based off of the scenario. So we're pretty much chalking 1, 2, 3, 4, Caleb, May, Daniels, flip flop, maybe MHJ.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's got to be either Alt or Neighbors to the Chargers, right? So let's say they take Neighbors. I would not be surprised if the Giants took Adunze at 6. I really wouldn't at all. I
Yeah.
wouldn't. Now, let's say they don't take him. Let's say they take Joe Alt at 5, which would kind of surprise me because they don't have receivers over there. They also have
Right.
an offensive line, though. Then Malik goes 6. I think the Titans might be enticed to take Adunze at 7. So I think there's 2 scenarios where they could take they could be off the board by top 7. Now, am I saying it's likely? Not necessarily, but I think there is a path there. So I don't know, man. It's going to be tough because we don't know the big boards. If we knew the big boards, it'd be easy to know because then we could just say, okay, well, this guy's going to be there and then this guy's going to be there and so on. But for all we know, Fashanu could be over Alt and Neighbors for the Giants. We don't know, you know? So,
Right.
it's tough to say, but if I had to say one way or the other, I would agree with you. Probably not, because I think it's probably going to go the way that you have it, where it's a scratch 4, Neighbors, whoever the Giants want to get, in your scenario. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It
Yeah.
could go a lot of different ways.
Yeah, it could. And I just, you look at these stats with Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, and Odunze. They're all fairly comparable.
Hmm.
And you know, I just it's weird to think how even though if we did a blind resume, and just went up to any not necessarily scout, but like just front office people that have say in drafting, it's like which wide receivers would you draft first, second, and third? And it'd
Hmm.
probably be reverse order of exactly what it is,
Exactly.
you know?
Yeah.
So and then I just it's hard to see Odunze go in there. But if the question was 9, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Or even 10, because I really wouldn't be super shocked if the Jets win Odunze at 10. I
True.
wouldn't be.
To pair up with
With Wilson,
Wilson and Lazard.
Lazard, and Tyler Conklin. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Is there any other questions that you want a spontaneous question that you have for me? We'll
I
take
don't
one.
think so, because I think we're gonna be able to get in deeper when we do our mock, because that one's gonna be probably a little bit longer of an episode, a little bit more in depth of each of these guys, and we can kind of pick into it then. But as of right now, I mean, I feel like the NFL draft and scout and fan community have a pretty good idea of kind of the top guys and where we kind of see them going. But I feel like when we do our group mock, we'll kind of be able to dig in deeper why it makes a lot of sense where these guys are going to go where they're going to go.
Yep. So I guess my spontaneous question I have for you, PT.
Okay.
Will this draft night 1 be more fun than it was last year, especially during this live stream?
Are we saying more fun for us or more fun for the community, or like,
More fun in
because
general, whatever. Because like last year was pretty fun, but this year, we know with the top 4, but anything can happen from
so here,
5 to 32.
yeah, so here's what I'll say. I think yes, because I think, yeah, the top 4 are pretty standard, but I think anywhere from 6 to 31, it could get real crazy because of how deep this draft is. I think how deep this class is, we could see a lot of different combinations of a lot of different guys in a lot of different spots. For all we know, there could be 6, 7 trades, but I think mainly just because of how deep certain positions are. You talk about offensive tackle, you talk about corner, wide receiver, how deep they are, there's going to be really good guys that fall in the second round, and we're going to be like, wow. And then, there's going to be teams that are going to go rogue and take guys that are second round talents, at least on our boards or Tankathon or whatever you look at, ESPN, CBS, that are going to fall in the second round. And then those guys in the second round are going to go first round, and we're going to be like, that guy really went first round. And that's going to be pretty crazy. So yeah, I mean, I think yes, just because of how deep this draft is, and I don't really care about how stacked the top four is. I mean, and that even makes it better because the top four is so solid that it's almost like we're seeing historical moments possibly of those guys going top four, especially the Caleb Williams pick and MHJ, those potential Hall of Fame guys that it might still be super fun just to see them get drafted to the team they're going to get drafted to.
Right. But all right, I think it's gonna be fun. Like we just kind of said, we have our live stream April 25th, Thursday night, starting at approximately 6:30 on YouTube. It's gonna be a fun time. A lot of games, reactions to the picks, talking about the picks. We'll have a nice little party. We'll see how the draft turns out, not only for our team, but for our group mock draft that's going to be coming out next week. So stay tuned for that one. Once again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP, follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. I've been Sam Holcroft.